So two choices. I got this down as one task, but then when I started thinking about it, reading about it, it's like, okay, can't fit into one class if we get into all the regulative principles, what they mean, and why they're principles of freedoms. Even doing one class for each, which we're not going to do. You can't get into it. The more you get into these principles, the more they expand and the more in depth you get. Satyaraj wrote a whole book on it, the 4 pillars of freedom. So he's super intelligent. So, and even he said, like, his book's a very nice book, but he said, okay, this is just touching the start of these principles. Anyway, so I thought we can either do 2 classes where we go through the principles a little bit and some of the ideas behind whether they're, like I said, we won't get through everything at all. It's only more of a, like, okay, present certain concepts, go away and think about it. Or we can do 1 class, which is just pretty much based on the false ego. Okay, that's good, because that's not okay.
1 minute.
Go for okay, so do the 2 classes. Looks like we need 1 sentence to see if we can get through everything, just for this. So today we're going to do like an introduction, and we'll deal with one of the regulative principles. We could find we end up mentioning the others anyway, because they all interconnect. It's not like, okay, there's this one, it's separate and has no effect on this one. They all interconnect. But there's, well, we'll hear about it, there's 4 pillars of human civilization, so pillars are there to support. So if you have 1 taken away, it's a lot harder to support. If you have 2 taken away, well, it depends which 2. Civilization becomes even harder to support. Take 3 away, forget it. Pretty much means civilization is going down. Now, when we read Bhagavatam, we hear in the story of Kalki that pretty much Kali Yuga means there's really only 1 pillar of religion left, and that's going. It's not so the other 3, forget it, they go. Now, for a materialistic society, if you're looking at the Vedas, because the 4 regulative principles as they're there as Vedic principles, are there to guide a society from, even if you're the most unspiritual person in the world, that at least you're living within a society that almost enforces spiritual life on you, or at least human life, so that you have the possibility of, at some point, maybe dipping your toe into spiritual life. And we see that all the way through the Vedas. There's, you have demigods and demigod worship, the Kalki, no, not Kalki, sorry, Kali Ma, then you can offer certain types of meat stuff to them. There's even, unfortunately, degradations of this where people start offering human sacrifices. And Kali Ma would accept. She'd be like, okay, well, I don't really like this, but at least they're offering before they go off and do what they're doing. Now, that's not a Vedic principle, but you see how they're there, that okay, you have this wide range of activities that even the lowest form of surrender, there's some way of acknowledging it from a demigod or demigods. And therefore, at least the principle of surrender is there. Now, human society, as far as the Vedic principles go, they have these pillars. So to be a human being and live in what's called a human society, you have to have these 4 principles happening. Otherwise it's not human society. Vedically speaking, it's considered the animal society. Which we can see in Kali Yuga these days. People, scientists generally and atheists, they'll make the statement, oh, we're just animals. And they're proud of it. They're like, oh, we're just animals, because it justifies the activity, that actually we can do what we want. Well, Vedically it's like, no, you're here in a prison. This is a prison. It's not a place where, it's not a holiday camp. It's not a break. It's like, okay, here's this place where the souls get reformed from their tendency to want to try and be God. It's for the souls that left Krishna, that said, actually, we don't want to conform to a society based on love and devotion, the reciprocal society of love and devotion. We actually want to be God. And so we come here. And that's our situation, as heavy and as hard as that may be to hear. That is why we're here. And it's a prison. Now, there's certain rules for that prison to get free. Like you go to a prison here, if you go to Cardiff prison, you commit a crime, you get sentenced, the judge may be lenient, he may be harsh, but you perform the crime, there's certain laws, and it's like, okay, if you perform this crime, this is the law. Now, in Britain, it's pretty relaxed. I just saw this article yesterday on Australia's new prisons, maximum security prisons. So this is for the worst offenders, the ones that are like, okay, these are the psychos, and they're open. They have all these little booths, it looks like an office, where they get a bed, or a student campus, they get a bed, a little TV box in the corner, and like these low-level separators, and they get their own little kind of room like that, but it's completely open plan. And the idea is that it's heavily monitored. There's CCTV around the place, like no one's business, and in each booth there's little cameras. And so the Australian government said, yes, this is going to encourage them to behave of their own accord, instead of us actually locking them behind bars and separating them. They know they're being watched, so because of that, they'll behave. In one sense it's mad, because you're asking maximum security prisoners to self kind of moderate themselves. Which I doubt whether they do. They just think, well, we don't care if someone's watching us. But yeah, this person's done this. And the other sense is that actually it's promoting this big brother society. That if you behave, you're fine, but we're going to be watching you all the time. So that's your impetus to behave. It doesn't work. It won't work. It will only lead to worse activities. We're in that kind of prison house, if you like. We have a super soul there, the ultimate law, monitoring our activities, and then it says, okay, here's the results. Now, if we want to live in a society which can elevate our activities, human society is what human society is for, then these principles have to be there in society. That's for Vedic human society, and to give the chance to elevate. Now, for us as devotees, it's something a bit more than that. It's not just saying, okay, yes, we want to live in a nice human society where we get the chance to practice what might be a multitude of spiritual activities to elevate ourselves. That would be a nice society to live in. But that's not the goal of our society. It just be a human society. The goal of our society is to always think of Krishna. So when we're looking at the four regs, yes, we can look at it from the point of view of like, this is what human form of life is, so we have to come at least to that platform when we're practicing, so that we can be in the right position, in other words, be a human, not an animal, by which we can then practice Krishna consciousness, but realize that that's the goal, to practice Krishna consciousness, not to be a human. So the goal isn't just to follow the four regulative principles. They're there as like an amendment to help us. It's like an extra thing that, okay, look, you have to follow these, because if you follow these, Krishna consciousness is going to be a lot easier. And we're going to see that actually they're quite detailed, and it depends on how much we want to get into it and how much we want to regulate our life and refine the nature of these principles. Sometimes they're very obvious, like we think, okay, yeah, so for gambling, well, okay, yeah, I'm not going into bookies, I'm not doing online banking, gambling, so therefore I'm not gambling. Which is true, it's good, we don't want to do the bookies. And we don't want to be placing bets in them. But it's a lot more in depth than that. And it goes more and more and more in depth. And it ties into other things like we talk about Vaishnava Aparad and the 10 offences. So we realise, okay, we have this principle, it helps us chant Hare Krishna to the level that we want to chant Hare Krishna, which is what ultimately everything we're doing is for, so we can chant Hare Krishna properly. In this regard, just to remind us of the goal, there's a verse which we should all know, an exceptionally famous verse, and this is the goal. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam avasyasi rupeva atmanam matrayana. Engage your mind in always thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Prabhupada in the purport of this says, in this verse it is clearly indicated that Krishna consciousness is the only means of being delivered from the clutches of this contaminated material world. So, here's our goal. That we always want to think of Krishna, we want to become his devotee, offer obeisances to him. It's a very nice verse describing the nature of love. Being completely absorbed in Krishna, then we'll go to Krishna. So to get out of the prison house, we have to become completely absorbed in Krishna. Now these 4 principles, regulative principles, they're there to help us get to that point where we can constantly think of Krishna. By freeing us from our material entanglement, by freeing us from our contaminated state, by freeing us from the illusion of thinking with this body, and by freeing us of the effects of our body. In other words, it's when this Golden Maharaj talks about. He gives me a very nice class here, but I've heard him talk about it a lot. You know, how many times do we think that our body's attacking? Generally we don't so much. We just go along with the body, we identify with the body, we have a personality, and that's who we are, and we go along with it, and then sometimes we have some clarity and we think, oh yeah, I'm not the body, and then we carry on. But these principles are there that, okay, they're going to free us from this concept of allowing the body to attack us. So, by following them, we become free. So sometimes we think they're restrictive, and they are, materially. That's why they're called regulative principles. That, okay, you regulate material activities, and then you'll be free from them. Now, those 4 pillars, those that are there for humanity, at large, and for our freedom are austerity, truthfulness, cleanliness, and mercy. Now, the first one, austerity, we don't actually like the sound of. We're not used to it. Generally, austerity for us, and for me, is like, okay, well, I get up in the morning. And that's an austerity. Especially if it's before 6 o'clock, it's like, okay, I've been austere today, I got up before 6. Get to it. I remember when I first joined, I was sleeping under a desk in a house that we had for 6 months. I had all my stuff in a rucksack in the cupboard, and we had this very simple house. The devotee that was living there, he had a bedroom, and there was another bedroom which was for guests and for Taraknath, and we stayed, and we had a temple room downstairs, and there was an office. Like, now we have this lovely big building which is the headquarters of Iskcon. Then we had this little room in a house in Lanrumney, which isn't a very nice area, and that was the headquarters of Iskcon in Wales. And in that headquarters, this little office room, and it wasn't big, I slept underneath the desk. Now, 22 years old, it was like, yeah, that was pretty good. Now it's only somebody that's sleeping under that desk. And now, then all of a sudden, you hear, okay, yeah, you've got to get up. It's 4:30. Now that's an austerity. Not the sleeping under a desk, it was like 4:30. That's when I used to be going to bed, not getting up. So all of a sudden there's a very simple austerity. And you do it, and you feel the benefits. You want to do like it, but it frees you from, in my case then, a lot of ignorance. Because you're certainly going to bed at the proper time, you're sleeping at the proper time, you're performing activities at the proper time. So these pillars, they're the same thing. We'll get into the austerity, cleanliness and nursing next week. This week we're going to talk more about truthfulness, which is the gambler. Which is interesting because all of a sudden when you see it as the pillar being truthfulness, so you refrain from gambling, it opens up a whole new meaning to what the gambling might actually be. Not just going to the bookies. Because what's going to the bookies got to do with being truthful. You're just saying, okay, I like the name of that one, so give me £10 on, I don't know, the Queen's knee at the temple one. How's that got anything to do with truthfulness? And again, saying, okay, this football team's going to win on this day, well, we're just guessing. But when you see it as truthfulness, the pillar being truthfulness, then gambling, when you examine it, has a whole other meaning. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of that, with all of them, the main ingredient is the false ego. The thing that they're regulating with all these principles is the false ego. Now we know what the false ego is, right? It's that thing that's there that says you're this body, you're a man, you're a woman, you're young, you're old, you're black, you're white, you're Romanian, you're Belgian, you're English, you're Welsh. When I first moved to Wales, it's a complete offensive aside. I remember when I started meeting a lot of Welsh people doing Sankirtan, because as a student I didn't meet so many Welsh people. But then when I was doing Sankirtan, you meet a lot of Welsh people and you see how proud the Welsh are of being Welsh. And then it made me laugh that it's amazing what the false ego can convince you of. Because I was proud to be English, so any excuse for some Welsh bashing. Wow, the false ego is amazing, it can convince you that being Welsh is a good thing. Which is true. And I remember Shiv Rama saying when we were up at Buckland Hall once, and it was this kind of weather in the summertime, and he looked out, and it's got a nice view, Buckland Hall, and he looked out and he was like, why would anyone want to live here? And I was the only Englishman in the room, there was 4 Welshmen, including Ty Krishna. And my Welsh kind of looked and he said, yeah, Wales isn't somewhere you live, it's just somewhere you're from. See the false ego is getting rough. Not like But then you see, yeah, we all have that. We have this bodily conception so ingrained in us that, and that's a very gross, obvious one. Yes, I'm this body. What to speak of all the subtleties of the false ego, which causes so much problems. So we have an opinion. Someone disagrees with that opinion. Generally, how do we react? It's an open question. How do we react when someone actually disagrees with our opinion?
Anger.
Yeah. We don't like that someone's challenged our opinion. We kind of, our thoughts would be as well, and then we have an argument. And sometimes they're really stupid little things. Generally they're over stupid little things. They don't have to be over big things. So we see how ingrained our false ego is. We've all lived with other people. We all are living with other people. And so we notice, we may like things in one cupboard. So someone puts them in another cupboard. Okay, I'll just put it back in this cupboard. Then we notice it's gone back in the other cupboard. I'm going to put it back in that cupboard. And we'll find out who's doing especially in Brahmachari ashram. Who's doing in this cupboard. And then, we find out there's little sidelong stairs in Japa period. And then that devotee does something else and it's like, whoo! Smash him for that. For his purification and for the good of the yatra and the brahmachari ashram. Where in reality, we talk about how to see so and so Prabhu, not so good. It's on Sankirtan. It's up to where it goes. Or because, they happen to put the salt cellar in this cupboard instead of the other cupboard. Or the iron went back in this cupboard instead of that cupboard. So it made us, our ironing or putting salt on the food a little bit more difficult. And we see it, we all have that. And that's a very simple thing, but we do it throughout our daily lives because our false ego is so ingrained into thinking that actually the world revolves around us. That we're the most important person in this play. We're the lead role, we're the star. And so therefore everything has to go around what we want. And as devotees, this is very dangerous. Because that's not our goal. Our goal isn't to always be thinking about us, our goal is to be thinking about Krishna. So therefore Krishna has to become the star of the show. Krishna is the star of the show. If we're lucky, we get a little bit part where we get to walk on. So we can see how the false ego is the source of all of our problems. All of our problems. And how important it is as devotees to get rid of that false ego. And that takes a long time. We have the majority of our process is getting rid of our false ego. Once you're rid of your false ego and you realize you're not the body, then we read in the Nectar of Devotion, the process is very quick. Bhav develops, and then when Bhav develops, Bhakti descends, because she realizes all of a sudden your heart is fertile. You have this Bhav, you have this hankering, and like we read in the poems and songs of Rupa Goswami, it's called the Gita Mala, where he's hankering, like, when will this day be when, Rati Manjari comes to me and says, today you can come and, decorate this kunj. That's Bhav. So when you're hankering like that, and you're hankering, okay, yes, instead of like, oh, well, I want this to happen, I want this pat on my head, I want this position, me, even with devotees, when we're just thinking, when will that day be that this Manjari comes and says, today you're going to come and do some service. That's what we're hankering for. That's our japa, isn't it? Prabhupada asked for the translation of the Maha Mantra, and he didn't give Gopal Guru Goswami's 16 verses. He gave a very concise, what's the word? Oh, it's not anthology. Anyway, concise explanation of those 16 verses and said, please, Lord, engage me in your service. Which is the highest principle of Bhav. That's what we're hankering for. So we're doing that every morning for 2 hours, praying to Krishna, to Radharani, to our spiritual master, to our spiritual masters, to the devotees, to the Panchatattva. Please engage me in your service. Please engage me in your service. So with that prayer, there can't be any false ego. There can't be like little kind of add-ons saying, please engage me in your service and give me some prayers. Please engage me in your service and, make me famous. Please engage me in your service and help me win the marathon. No. Let's please engage me in your service. So the false ego, we have to get rid of it. That's why we have, as devotees, we have these 4 principles of freedom. The regulative principles. They regulate the activities of the false ego. Which is why it's important for us to actually study these principles and see, okay, this is how they affect our life. In the negative and in the positive. This is how they reinforce the false ego, just by their general nature. And this is how they free us from our false ego, when we restrict them. This is how material energy tries to force us to engage in acts of degradation. And this is how, if we regulate our activities materially, we can actually become free of material energy, along with the activities of Krishna consciousness. So it's the choice, okay? We follow these principles, we become free, or we don't follow them, and then actually we become prisoners more. We take rebirth for however many lifetimes until we get the chance to try again. So they're very important. They're not just something which we say at the time of initiation, and then we take the bare minimum, and we don't go into our bookies, we don't perform gross sexual activity, we don't eat meat, fish or eggs, and we're not intoxicated. Line freeze. And we don't get intoxicated. In other words, we're not down the pub, or we're not visiting the local drug den. That's very, 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 very basic. Now, if we go into them in more depth, we realise they're actually a lot more detailed. And then when we go into them in depth, then we realise the nature of our false ego more. That's what's important to go into them in depth, because then we start recognising the false ego. And what happens when you recognise something, you can see it, so therefore you can stop it. If you can't see it, you can't stop it. Everyone knows when you cross the road, when you're a kid, you get the green cross code man coming to your school. It was out, well, I don't know if I do that anymore, but when I was a kid, it was, guy in his white outfit, a big green cross on his chest, and he tells all the kids, okay, this is what you do, stop, look and listen. Because then you can see what's coming. Don't stop and don't look and don't listen, then you're not going to see it. So it's the same. If we delve into these, we see the oncoming traffic of our material desires, of material energy attacking us, and we can then, okay, now I'm going to avoid it. I'm not going to get run over. I'm going to wait and say, okay, no, I'm not going to engage in this. But if we can't see the false ego, we'll just carry on. We'll be performing all these activities, getting purified, but then we'll be also engaging our false ego in the activities that bind it. We'll be committing offences. We'll be causing chanting in the temple of japa. Because our false ego will dictate it. And we're running when that's happening. We'll be thinking, yeah, everything's fine. And then little things come at us and not like that. Like this. And then all of a sudden we start creating a philosophy around what suits us. And that's a really big offence. Anyway, I haven't got much time, so it's a big part of it anyway, understanding the principles, because that the false ego is such an over-empowering thing that when you can understand it, when you can see it, it makes becoming free of it so much easier. We don't get into arguments anymore. We can perform service how it's meant to be performed. We can see things clearly. It's one of the symptoms of motor goodness, right? You can see things as they are. One of the symptoms of insanity is you actually can't see things for what they are. So we don't want to be insane. We want to be sane. We want to be able to see things truthfully. Not from the point of view of the false ego, not from the point of view of the body, but from a spiritual perspective. That's why the first principle, out before gambling, back to the court, he lists them like this. So that first pillar of truthfulness. Now, like I said, we have the obvious one, that we don't go into the bookies, we're not online, or we're not playing roulette at the weekend, or we're not saying, so give me £10 on Ronaldo to score the first goal, £20 on France when we World Cup. No, that's the obvious one, which we don't do, obviously, and that's very easy not to do. It's very gross. So even if you're a gambling addict, you can stop it. It's very gross. It's like, well, okay, I don't go into a bookies. That's it. Problem solved. I don't go online, do an online betting thing. I don't, make these bets. So it's very gross, very easy. Now the subtle, the not so obvious, well, not so easy. And they're the ones that cause the most damage. Because we're not noticing them, and so they're just there, telling us, do this, and we're still going along with it. Now, I'm going to concentrate on one or two more than the others, but the not so obvious. Anyone got any ideas to throw out the not so obvious habits of gambling or being untruthful that we have, that we fall into these regulative principles? In other words, basic principles we have to regulate to do gamble, the general good that we do. Speculate. Okay. What does that mean?
Well, we don't know something and just try to guess. So try to figure out without knowing.
Define it a bit more.
Yeah, we're gambling on our ability to figure out things, and we actually we don't have the capacity to understand. We're gambling on our own ability.
Do you think of any definitions given by our charities? Well, speculating. Define what speculating is.
Anything which is not mentioned in the scriptures is
yeah, back to the here's a definition of speculating. It's around that says that anything that's not for the progress of Krishna consciousness. And then he defines it further in his explanation of method instruction, and he gets into Prajalpa and what Prajalpa means, and how Prajalpa is under this gambling, this mundane gossip basically with Prajalpa. He says it's not talking about material activities, he says it's engaging in mundane talks which aren't for the progression of preaching Krishna consciousness. Which is interesting, because in his explanation it's like you can talk about material things if the purpose of that talk of material things is for understanding the nature of Krishna consciousness, understanding the nature of material activities, or for preaching. So sometimes we just think, if it's anything but mentioning the word Krishna, which Prajalpa, back from the core, it gives a bit more of an in-depth thing. But actually it's anything that's outside of either the preaching or, like we were saying, the direction of Vedic principles of how to act is sort of speculation. So yeah, when we make stuff up that we're not sure, or we act differently to what the Vedas are prescribing activities to be, then yeah, it comes under the guise of gambling and speculation. Or when we're engaging in material talks, not for the benefit of preaching. Now that changes quite a lot, yes, of whether we're following the regulative principles or not. Because back to the motor call, he actually explains even more, and he really gets into this. The speculation, he divides it into two. One is like the mundane talks, and he says gossip, like temple gossip, where we're talking about, oh, he said this, she said that, or did you notice, oh yes, so-and-so's doing this, so-and-so's doing that. Beyond for the need of preaching or management, it's not that we can't talk about management, most of it is having to manage devotees, so you have to understand where the devotees are at. But it's the mundane gossiping, the idle gossiping of oh, so-and-so's doing this, because that reinforces the false ego, because what gossiping is doing is saying, okay, I don't want to look at myself, so I can look at others, and I can judge, and therefore I must make myself feel better. And Bhakti Yoga doesn't just say that about devotees, he actually spreads that out. And he talks about Vaishnava Aparad and Jiva Aparad being under this thing of gambling, speculative talks. And so it's even when we're just, okay, we may think, okay, well, we can't gossip about devotees. I will gossip about the non-devotees. Bhakti Yoga says this is the same. It may not be as harmful, but it still reinforces this idea of better or worse. Instead of us feeling, and then that reinforces certain mentalities of harshness, hard-heartedness. It doesn't develop the qualities of being merciful, of being soft-hearted, of humility, of compassion, because we're idly talking about others' conditioning and finding fault in it. Which requires us to look within ourselves then. So there's truthfulness, there's gambling means, okay, you have to look inwardly and refine your own activities, so therefore you have to know what the Vedic standard is, so you're not speculating. So therefore your activities, not gambling, means that you start to find out, and you may not be perfect straight away, not perfect straight away, but it's finding out, gaining knowledge of, okay, this is how to act. And this is where the false ego kicks in, because generally when we read in scriptures about this is how to act, because we're the residents of Kali Yuga and we've got this beautiful Kali Yuga education, our false ego goes, no way, I don't agree with that. I think that's wrong. Because I don't like the sound of it. And that doesn't mean then we become heavy, kind of, like I forget what they were called, my mind's not looking this morning. There's a type of Protestant that came out of Holland and was very popular in Puritans, Puritans. So they, the Dutch were fond of it, the British were fond of it, and some of the kind of Anglo-German society were fond of it. And it was basically like this very, very strict lifestyle on ourselves, but also very harsh on others. And it was very, very black and white. It was very, very gross. Without any feeling of compassion or love there. It's like, the houses that had no decorations. You couldn't decorate at all. Because no, that meant enjoyment. And you couldn't eat tasty food. They literally ate boiled food. You weren't allowed salt. because salt meant taste, and taste means enjoyment, and if you're enjoying, it's sinful. And if you're sinful, you need to be beaten until you're free of that sin. Maybe some of us here, sounds fair. But no, that's not the way to do it. It doesn't bring about purification of the heart in the practitioner or the person that has to be the guru. Just beat. No, we have to understand. So we have to have that knowledge, be strict with ourselves, but with compassion, with love. Even with ourselves, and understanding of like, okay, yes, I have this. Now, instead of just beating myself, mentally, how can I overcome it? Because if we beat ourselves mentally about it, then generally is when we see that within ourselves and we're like, or we see something we don't like, then if we're not on a platform of goodness, or we're not free from our false ego, the general principle is then we will start to look at others and find fault. Because what we see within our hearts will cause us too much pain, so we'll have to outwardly, point it outward instead of inwards. And we don't want to do that. So we're not necessarily harsh with ourselves, we're not harsh with others, but we accept. It's that point of view of being free from the false ego again. If you're not doing things on the platform of the false ego, all of a sudden you can just accept, okay, this is where my body's at, this is my conditioning, now what do I do to become free of it? And it really is as simple as that. When there's no false ego. When there's false ego, it makes it very complicated. He also then, he separates the second one, is then with dealings with others. So gambling, he means speculative dealings with each other. And then that means, generally he puts it into like business, but also this kind of, what can I get? In Britain we call it ducking and diving. The British anti-hero is the ducker and diver, the one that's kind of, he's not following the rules, he's outside of society and pulls off all these little, always gets the great result, and by ducking and diving, cheating others, and the end result is there, and look at all his plans that he made, and his little cheats here and there to get that. I mean, in Britain we all like that, cheeky little chappy. But for us being devotees, that's not good, because we all know one of the defects of Kali Yuga is that we have a propensity to cheat. So Bhakti Yoga course says this is under this propensity of gambling, this propensity to cheat, to duck and dive. We'll do it this way, we'll do it that way, we've got all our plans, our machinations, and the end result will be we get what we want. That's how Monday business works. Whatever it takes to beat the competition. Whatever it takes. You have to deal with business like that. Cutthroat business work. So that's speculation. That's gambling. Why? And what's the effect of it? Well, anyone guess what the effect of this cheating propensity is, or this ducking and diving, or the one-upmanship and the speculative dealings of the business world? Well, it does that, but more specifically, what does this mood of gambling, when it's done in the business world, this cheating propensity of like, okay, I have this material goal, now I'm going to do whatever it takes to get that material goal. Generally in business.
Caught up in the end.
No.
Nature didn't want to do that thing.
That's part of it. That as well.
And lower morals and discriminations, not to
Get
raise
wrong.
yourself to get.
That's not that of it. Yeah. Generally, it's that it binds us to material things. It gives us this sense of like, we become materially motivated. In other words, we get more attracted to material energy because it increases our material desires. And what does the Bhagavad Gita say about increased material desires? What's the result? Yeah. And then with dealings every day, if our material desires increase, what comes along after it? That's the end result. Yeah, lust. Lust and greed. And what comes from lust and greed? Anger. What happens when you get angry? Yeah. We become horrible. We harm people. We start engaging in a violent society. Now, whether that's psychological violence or physical violence, it's there. So when we have this speculation in this way, in other words, I have a material goal, now how do I get it? And it's outside of the Vedic principles of how to get it. In other words, we're deciding if I duck here, dive there, boom, 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 I'm going to get this. It's the mode of passion. Then that leads to anger, lust, greed, which just makes us more degraded. So we have to be careful with this as devotees. We all have our little plans. And that's okay. We're allowed to have, plans for our devotional careers. Like, this is how I'd like my devotional career to develop. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's how we then put those plans into practice. That's why we have to understand, okay, are we doing this in a truthful, honest way? And that's described as being not based on our material speculations of what truthful and honesty is, because that changes. We may all have slightly different definitions of what being honest is and what being truthful is. And we'll all think, generally we all think we're pretty truthful, honest people. But if sometimes something happens in the temple and we've been involved and we're like, well, if I put my hand up to that one, I'm going to get in trouble. So I'll just kind of direct the attention over here instead, away from this topic and towards this topic. Or I just won't say anything. I'll keep stum, and then I'll let others come to whatever conclusions they're going to come to. And that way we're not being dishonest. We're just no. But then even deeper than that, truthful. What's really truthful? When we say, okay, yes, I'm not this body, that's being truthful. When we think, oh, I am this body, and then we react to things based on that principle, that's being dishonest. We all do that. All of us, probably most of us here in the men's corner think we're men, and most of the women in the women's corner think they're women. Now we have to become free of that, because then we're starting to see things from the Vedic perspective, the Krishna conscious perspective, the perspective of our soul, eternal servant of Krishna, which brings us back to our goal again, of course, in Krishna. It starts off by being honest. So all of a sudden, just gambling for the principles, for following the principles, if we're getting really in depth, it's like, well, okay, am I acting on the bodily platform? If I am, is that breaking the principles? So we have a very gross ones, like I said, and that's the ones we have to follow. Now, as then we're progressing on our devotional journey, we get more in depth and we realize, well, okay, yes, I have to get more in depth. And it's described like that. In our devotional path, the path at the start is very, very wide, and then as you progress, it gets very, 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 very thin. And then the more you progress, it's thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, so then there's less leeway for material things. Because Krishna, as you progress, Krishna is saying, okay, now you're getting closer to that point that I'm going to give myself to you. So this wide bit is like, okay, yeah, you're starting on a path of love. So I'll give myself a little bit. So you have a lot of leeway to make mistakes. But then the deeper the relationship, there's less leeway. Because Krishna's becoming more and more bound. And he doesn't just give himself to anybody. You have to love him completely, be completely absorbed in him for him to give himself to you completely. that doesn't leave a lot of leeway. It's not like, okay, I'll be completely absorbed in you Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday will be a bit mixed, Friday and Saturday for me. And Sunday, well, we'll see, it's open. See how I feel. No, every day, every minute. So that's very, very fine. There's no margin for anything material there. So it's the same as regulative principles. When we start, okay, yeah, no going in the bookies. But we have to have knowledge. That's not the end, that's the beginning. We have knowledge, okay, well, how does this refine? How does it refine? What does it actually mean? Because then that refinement is freeing us. Not going in the bookies isn't going to free you from your false ego. Not thinking of the body, that will. Acting on the principles of understanding, the Vedic principles of understanding you're not the body, and acting in that way, that will free you. If we gamble, in other words, if we're acting on the thing of still thinking we're the body, reinforces the false ego and it binds you. So all of a sudden, not gambling becomes this very, very intricate process of understanding you're not the body, acting on Vedic principles, acting on that principle, of not being the body. That's being truthful. So all of a sudden we realise all the pillars, it's not quite as simple as we thought at first. Become free, seeing it as that pillar of freedom, freeing us from this contaminated sense of thinking I am man, I am woman. This very gross activity. Now, some of the smaller effects we see in our world now, through this kind of speculative, not being truthful, this not following this regulative principle of gambling, means that anxiety arises, because the more attached we get to the body, the more attached we get to material activities, the excessive material attachment we get from these speculative behaviours, in other words, behaviours that are outside the Vedic injunction, is that anxiety increases, anger increases, violence increases, mental health issues increase, paranoia increases. So we can see, if we want a nice, even if we just want a nice society without these things, and we can see all these things increasing in society. World Health Organization says that the biggest disease for this century is going to be mental health. It's going to be the biggest killer. So that means more than any other diseases together, the biggest killer for this century is going to be mental health. Which generally, if mental health is killing you, it means you've killed yourself, commit suicide. So what the World Health Organization is saying, okay, the biggest killer for this century is going to be suicide. And we see it already. Suicides in young people have gone up. And by young people, I don't mean 18-year-olds, I mean 11-year-olds, 10-year-olds. Now, for us, it's like, what, 10-year-olds are killing themselves? What the heck? Why would a 10-year-old want to kill themselves? But they are. So we can see, even for a nice society, this pillar, there's no gambling, this being truthful is needed. We realise for society as a whole, we have to start acting on the principles of not being in the body, on Vedic principles. Otherwise, all these symptoms of Kali Yuga that we see, they're just going to increase. They're just going to increase. Right. That's some of the approach. We become free from all those. Now, as devotees, for our goal again, apart from being free from the false ego, free from the body, free from anxiety, stress, depression, paranoia, free from violence, free from our mind disturbing us, these are the symptoms of non-gambling. But for us, the main thing is actually it increases our faith and enables us to see things as they are. It enables us to see the material energy for what it is. It enables us to see the false ego for what it is. It enables us to see the body for what it is, how it binds. And we can see all those things for what they are. we can become free. When we're free, our faith increases. When our faith increases, again, that point we made so much during the 10 offences course, Bhav develops, and then Bhakti descends.